Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Kris. This is Concord, the Shot Heard Round the World History Traveler, episode 261. I just did 260. As I stated, I did 262 first because I wasn't paying attention. So this is History Underground. If you can click that thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, it helps out tremendously. Donate to the channel through the thanks button. Request a video. Your name's sponsoring that video. You can still request without donating. It just takes a little more time. Okay? I've gotten all that. Oh. Sorry. So this is the end of 260. That, if you haven't seen, you're just jumping in now. That is the Bowling Green of Lexington. So that's that one. You should go back and watch it or watch his channel. That's fine.
We just left the town of Lexington, Massachusetts, and in the last episode we were talking about how on April 18th of 1775 Gage had deployed some British regulars to move out to Concord to try and secure some hidden arms and ammunition that were rumored to be in this area. And we talked about how, in the early morning hours of the 19th, Paul Revere and others had warned people in this area that the British regulars were coming. They first confront the British regulars at Lexington, and the battle that ensued there would leave 8 colonials dead and an additional 10 wounded. But the British continued on past Lexington to get to Concord to try and secure these arms at places like this place right behind me. This is the Barrett House. What the British didn't know is that there were militiamen and Minutemen coming out of the woodwork, and they were about to have a very bad day. Well, as I mentioned, we are standing in front of the house of James Barrett. Now, in 1775, James Barrett's family would have included 2 sons and a daughter. There was also a 14-year-old enslaved boy by the name of Philip who lived here. He would actually go on to fight in the Continental Army and gain his freedom. But on the morning of April 19th of 1775, out of the 700-man British force, there would have been a detachment of about 120 that would have made their way up this road right here to search Barrett's house. So as I said, we're a couple miles west of Concord right now. The rest of the British regulars were left just outside of town to secure a couple of bridges that we will get to here in a little bit. But Barrett had been placed in charge of, securing cannons and firearms and ammunition and dispersing them around the area. Well, when Thomas Gage was tipped off that that Barrett might have some weapons here, well, that's when the British made him and his house a target. They were warned in enough time to, get the cannon. I think there were 4 cannon, and the firearms off of the property. But when the British arrived, they've been already in a scrap in Lexington. They've been marching all night and all day, and they were tired and hungry and asked for something to drink and for something to eat. And supposedly Barrett's wife, Rebecca, who was 57 at the time, replied coldly, "We are commanded to feed our enemy if he hunger." They actually offered to pay her, but she refused. So one of the officers tossed a shilling into her lap, and she said, "This is the price of blood." Okay, so the British were getting a chilly reception here. And
Just a second. So, when I did a tour in Vincennes, Indiana, the governor's home of future 9th President William Henry Harrison. This is the home that during the war of, leading up to the War of 1812. Not this home, sorry. The home in Vincennes. There's a point to this, I promise. He had 2 sit-down meetings with Tecumseh. So anyways, I don't know about this door, but this door, if you were a traveler back in the early colonial days and people saw this door, they knew they were welcome because this was considered a Christian door. And as soon as I say it, you can see the cross, right? You see that? So you sometimes see these, like you see that right there. Now imagine if that was down and this was like a window. This is one thing you'll see. You might see a little half moon window, which represents the rising sun over the cross. And then down here, this is the middle of a Bible that's opened. So that is an open Bible with the cross. And if there's nothing here, it doesn't mean that, they did it wrong. No, sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's a half a moon. Sometimes it's this. But if it's a half a moon, then they're going all out to show the rising sun over the cross and then a Bible. This over here, I have no idea. It's almost like an upside down cross, but I'm not saying that that's what it is. That's really strange that both of these doors are they're the same, but they're different. Sorry, one of my dogs. Anyways, just thought I'd share.
This is the price of blood. Okay, so the British were getting a chilly reception here. And they were about to find out how chilly of a reception they were going to receive back in Concord because things were about to get
all right, sorry about that.
Very kinetic over around a place called the North Bridge. Okay, so we're going to head over there right now.
Maybe like that door and that door are the same. So maybe that's to show that that's the front door. I'm trying to analyze something that really isn't important, but it's weird to me. Okay.
So I've moved away from the Barrett house and I'm back towards Concord in an area that since the Revolution has become known as the muster field. So on the morning of the 19th, the company of militia and Minutemen from Concord would have originally mustered up on the other side of Concord, but when they saw the British regulars coming, they ended up falling back across the bridge and came up here to this hilltop to just kind of have an observation point to watch and see what was going to happen. Well, as they are here, men, or companies rather, from other towns like Acton and Lincoln and Bedford show up until there are about 400 men all here mustered up in this field just watching and observing what is happening in Concord. Here along the muster field there's an old stone marker, and I don't know when this was placed here, but it says, on this field the Minutemen and militia formed before marching down to the fighting at the bridge. So again, on the morning of the 13th, you have all of these men who are standing here watching.
Sorry, phone.
And waiting. Got a little bit of wind going on here. And they're looking out towards the town of Concord. So this is approximately the view that they would have had. I don't know about the vegetation. I'm assuming that there was less trees. But As the British are in Concord, they start setting fire to ammunition and military supplies and things like that. And the men up here can see smoke rising from the town, and they think that the British have set fire to Concord. Now, in between them and Concord, there's a bridge that has 96 British regulars guarding it. And according to tradition, a lieutenant by the name of Joseph Hosmer goes to a group of officers and he says, "Will you let them burn the town down?" And you have these men who are volunteering to go and dislodge the British from the bridge and go in to Concord. And there's another guy by the name of Captain Davis who draws his sword and says to a company, he says, "I haven't a man that is afraid to go." And then he gives the word to march. Before we make our way down to the bridge, I wanted to point this out. If you look here, you can see the remains of a foundation of a home.
I was actually going to say it looked like graves that had been sunk in. So his is far less morbid than mine.
That once stood here. This was the home of a Concord resident by the name of David Brown. On the morning of April 19th, David Brown would have been 47 years old and was the captain of one of Concord's Minuteman companies. So the muster field is just right up there above where his house stood, and then down there in the distance is the North Bridge. So the British are like literally trespassing on his property. So this is quite personal to him. Also joining Brown in this fight was his oldest son, a guy by the name of Purchase. He had a cousin named John and also a nephew named Jonas who was going to be wounded in the battle. And yeah, old Brown was going to be fighting one of the most consequential battles, not only in American history, but in world history, right in his front yard. So again, as I mentioned, there are going to be 3 companies of British regulars right up here defending this bridge. It's about 96 men. And originally they were deployed right here on this side of the bridge, on the west side of the bridge. Well, when they see 400 colonials, Minutemen and militia descending upon them, well, they knew that they had done messed up. So they end up retreating to the other side of the bridge. And it's here where the shot heard around the world is going to be fired. Here at the North Bridge, they have this monument, and as you can see, it's quite busy here today, which is a good thing. I've seen a lot of kids. It's good to see kids getting out here and learning about the past. But here we have this.
Kids don't show up to learn about the past. Kids are, come on. There. Kids don't show up to learn about the past. They're only there because their parents are there or it's a field trip, and even then they're not caring. They're not interested. You have to get older and have an appreciation. I didn't care about any of this stuff until I was in my 30s. I mean, late teens.
This Minuteman statue, and as you can see, this man, he has his flintlock musket in his right hand, and on his left his hand is leaving the plow. So he's a man of peace, but because of the tyranny, well, now he is becoming a man of war. So the British regulars, as I mentioned, had moved over to the other side of the North Bridge, and as the militiamen and Minutemen were approaching the bridge here, it's generally agreed upon that the British fired the first shot. The details are a little hazy. But anyway, the Colonials returned fire, and that is going to be what Ralph Waldo Emerson would call the shot heard round the world in his poem Concord Hymn. That was read at the dedication of the memorial that you see across the bridge there. And anyway, in that exchange, Captain Isaac Davis and Abner Hosmer are going to be killed. I've moved over to the other side of the river on the British side, and real quick, just wanted to make mention of this home right here. This was the home to the grandfather of Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a preacher here in the area of Concord. His name was William Emerson. And he was pretty well known for criticizing the British Parliament from the pulpit, and became known as the Patriot Preacher. And in Concord, he was in the town center just before the clash on the bridge here behind me. And he is said to have stated, "Let us stand our ground. If we die, let us die here." And then later on, this place known as the Old Manse played a pretty important role in American literature. It was from here that a lot of writers kind of gathered. Ralph Waldo Emerson is thought to have wrote Nature from this place. Nathaniel Hawthorne also lived in this house for a short period of time. Yeah, pretty cool. We're gonna wrap up our time here at Concord on the British side of the bridge. And as you can see, they have a monument here, and let me read it real quick. It says, "Here on April 19th of 1775 was made the first forcible resistance to British aggression. On the opposite bank stood the American militia. Here stood the invading army, and on the spot the first of the enemy fell in the war of that revolution which gave independence to these United States." And you might be wondering, the British regulars who had gone to the Barrett farm that I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, well, what happened to them? Because they were trapped over on the other side of the river, it would seem. Well, what happened is the militia that was on this side of the river ended up withdrawing, and it allowed the men who had been to the Barrett farm to come and cross this bridge right here. But they left a few behind. And if you take a look, right here is the grave of the British soldiers who died right here at the North Bridge of Concord. It says "Grave of British Soldiers," and then there's a poem. It says, "They came 3,000 miles and died to keep the past upon its throne. Unheard beyond the ocean tide, their English mother made her moan." April 19th, 1775. Dang, that's kind of cold. But anyway, they are at rest right here near where they fell at the North Bridge. Now, when you see anything about the battles of Lexington and Concord, typically they kind of make brief mention of the fact that the British ended up having to go on this big retreat back to Boston. But that's actually where most of the dying was going to occur for the British soldiers. There's a big run and gun fight that occurs between here in Concord and Boston. And we're going to be tackling the battle road in the next episode.
Okay. And that was good. And then there's one more that I'll be covering. 262 already did. So sneak preview right here. So now you know what's coming up after that one. So we're going to end this one here. I hope you enjoyed. I did. So until next time.